There is a room, Chicago 1920. The Republicans are deadlocked, nobody can win. It's the middle of the night, and a handful of party bosses go up to a hotel suite, close the door, light up cigars, and by morning they've got a nominee nobody was really talking about the week before.
And that's where we get the phrase, the smoke-filled room.
That's exactly where it comes from. Warren Harding allegedly settled on in a suite at the Blackstone Hotel. Now, historians will tell you the real story is messier.
It's a lot messier. The phrase got attached afterward, and one of Harding's own managers reportedly bragged about the smoke-filled room, which is part of why it stuck.
So the legend is doing some of the storytelling for us.
It usually is.
Well, good, then let's tell it properly. I'm Amara Queen, and today the three of us are pulling apart something most people think they understand and mostly don't. How America actually picks who runs for president.
Nico Petrov. And I'll be the one saying, well, the record's a bit more complicated than that all episode, so settle in.
Ravi Menon, and I'll be the one dragging us into hotel rooms and back rooms because that's where this whole thing lives.
So let's start at the beginning, because I think a lot of people assume primaries, the thing where you go vote in your party's contest, I think people assume that's just always been how it works.
It hasn't. For most of American history, ordinary people had almost no direct say in who a party nominated. None.
The founders didn't even plan for parties. They thought parties were a disease. Washington's whole farewell warning.
The spirit of party, yes.
And then within about a decade, boom, party everywhere. Because it turns out you can't run a country the size of America without some way of organizing who's on whose side.
So how did they pick before primaries?
Early on, and this is the part that surprises people, it was congressmen. The party's members of Congress would basically caucus among themselves and anoint a candidate. People at the time called it King Caucus.
King Caucus. Not a flattering name.
No, and it was meant unkindly. The idea that a small group of legislators in Washington should hand the country its choice. By the 1820s, that felt deeply wrong to a lot of Americans.
And why then? What changed that suddenly made it feel wrong when it hadn't before?
The country was getting bigger and more democratic in its self-image. States were dropping property requirements to vote, so far more ordinary men could cast a ballot. And once you've told a man he's got a vote, telling him a handful of congressmen will decide the real question for him, well, that starts to sting.
And it blew up. 1824, 4 men running, the caucus system falls apart, the whole thing goes to the House of Representatives to decide. And the guy who won the most votes, Andrew Jackson, doesn't get the presidency.
Because the House picks someone else.
They pick John Quincy Adams.
And Jackson never lets it go, I assume.
He builds a whole career on it. Reportedly, he calls it the corrupt bargain. The idea that Adams and Henry Clay cut a deal. Clay swings the House to Adams. Adams makes Clay Secretary of State. Whether or not that's fair, Jackson runs the next 4 years as the man the elites cheated. And it works. He wins big the next time.
And that resentment, that sense that elite stole it in a back room, that's a thread we're going to keep pulling on today. It never really goes away.
So King Caucus collapses. What replaces it?
The convention. And I love this because the convention actually started as the reform. It was the democratic fix.
That's the irony people miss. We think of the old party convention as this smoke-filled backroom monster.
Right, the thing primaries rescued us from.
But when it arrived in the 1830s, the convention was the populist upgrade. Instead of a dozen congressmen deciding, you'd send delegates from all the states to one big hall and they'd hash it out in the open.
In the openish.
In the openish, yes.
Okay, so walk me through what one of these actually felt like, because I want the texture. What's it like to be in that hall?
Oh, it's chaos. It's glorious chaos. Thousands of people, brass bands, states standing up one by one to announce their vote. The great state of Ohio casts its votes for, and it could go on for ballot after ballot after ballot.
Ballot after ballot, meaning they'd vote and nobody would win, and they'd just vote again?
Again and again. 1824 we mentioned, but the real monsters come later. There's a Democratic convention in 1924 that ran to more than 100 ballots.
100?
Over 100. It went on for days in the summer heat in New York, and it wrecked the party for that election. People called it a fiasco at the time, and they weren't wrong.
And here's the human thing. The candidates themselves often weren't even there. It was considered undignified to show up and beg. So you'd be sitting at home while your managers worked the floor and you'd get a telegram. You're the nominee. Or you're not.
You'd find out by telegram.
By telegram. Imagine you are pacing your parlor and a boy runs up with a wire.
That's genuinely a different world.
It is. And the people actually deciding on that floor were the delegates. And the delegates mostly answered to state party leaders, the bosses.
And what were they actually doing between ballots? When a vote fails and they reset, where does the real work happen?
In the corners, in the hotels across the street, a candidate stalls, his support won't grow, and his managers start shopping him. We'll release our delegates to you if you promise our man the vice presidency, or a cabinet seat, or a road built through our state. That's the horse trading. The floor is the theatre. The deal is upstairs.
Let's talk about the bosses then, because that's the villain of the story, as most people have it.
And here I want to be careful, because boss gets used like a cartoon.
No, some of them were cartoons.
Some of them earned it, fine. But the machine wasn't only corruption. A city machine, Tammany Hall in New York being the famous one.
Tammany, now that's an institution.
A machine was also functionally a social service system. You're a new immigrant, you get off the boat, you don't speak the language, there's no welfare state. The machine gets you a job, gets you coal in the winter, helps when your husband's hurt at work.
And in return?
In return, you vote how they tell you. On election day and at the convention, that loyalty is the currency.
I'll follow the money on that, because that's the part I find really telling. The boss isn't doing charity. He is building a reliable block of votes he can deliver. And a block you can deliver is worth something. Jobs, contracts, who gets the paving deal, who gets the police appointment.
So the whole thing runs on favors going up and down.
Favors all the way down. And a nomination is just the biggest favor of all. If you can walk into that hall controlling 300 delegates, presidential candidates come to you.
And what did people at that time think of that? Were they angry, or did they mostly accept it as how things worked?
Both, depending on who you asked. For the family that got a job through the machine, the boss was a benefactor. For the reformer watching public money vanish into a crony's pocket, he was a thief. The muckraking journalists of that era made careers exposing the graft, the padded contracts, the ghost employees on the city payroll.
And both things were true at once. That's the part that's hard for us now. The same man who paid for a poor widow's funeral was skimming a fortune off the waterworks.
Which is why the smoke-filled room is real in the sense that matters. The specific Harding story is dressed up, but rooms like that, where a few men who each controlled a block of delegates sat down and traded, those absolutely happened. That was the mechanism.
So it's not that the myth is false, it's that the myth is a tidy version of a messy true thing.
That's exactly it. The cartoon is wrong, the underlying picture is right.
So when does the ordinary voter get let in the door?
Progressive era, turn of the century into the 1910s. And the idea is beautifully simple and radical. Let the actual voters pick the delegates or even pick the candidate directly. A primary election.
Wisconsin's usually credited as an early mover on the direct primary, around 1904. And the reformers' argument was pure. The bosses are stealing the people's choice, so cut them out. Let the people vote.
And I can feel the but coming.
We just met and you can already hear the but coming.
I can hear it building. You've got a whole wind-up.
Fine. The but is, the early primaries were real, but they weren't in charge. You could win primaries and still lose the nomination because the convention still decided, and most delegates still weren't bound by any primary vote.
The classic case people point to, 1912. Theodore Roosevelt goes out and wins primary after primary against the sitting president, Taft.
His own former ally.
His own hand-picked successor. That's the knife in it. Roosevelt wins the primaries where they are held and Taft still gets the nomination because the party machinery holds the convention.
So Roosevelt could really say the voters wanted me and the bosses overruled them.
And he did say it loudly. He storms off, forms his own party.
The bull moose and splits the Republican vote and hands the White House to Woodrow Wilson.
So the first big fight over do voters or bosses decide ends with the guy who lost the fight blowing up the election out of spite.
More or less. And that tension just sits there unresolved for 50 years. Primaries exist, but they are more like auditions. A candidate uses them to prove he can win, to show the bosses he's electable.
A beauty contest. That's the term of art. You'd enter a primary to demonstrate strength, not to actually collect a binding prize.
And a candidate could just skip them entirely if he wanted?
Absolutely. If you were confident the party leaders were behind you, you might not bother competing in a single primary. Why hand your rival a chance to embarrass you? You'd let him wear himself out on the trail while you counted your delegates the quiet way.
So there's a moment where it all changes. Where do we put the hinge?
1968. If you want 1 year, that's the year.
Oh, it has to be 68. The whole thing cracks open.
Set it up for me. What's the situation going in?
It's a brutal year in America. The war in Vietnam is tearing the country apart. Lyndon Johnson, the sitting Democratic president, shocks everyone and announces he won't run again. Then Robert Kennedy, who'd become the great hope of the anti-war voters, is assassinated in June.
In the middle of the campaign.
In the middle of it. And the man who ends up with the Democratic nomination that summer is Hubert Humphrey, the vice president, who had not entered and won the primaries.
He didn't run in them. He collected the nomination through the party apparatus, the old way, delegates lined up by the leadership. And meanwhile, you've got all these anti-war voters who'd poured their hearts into the primaries feeling like we were never even allowed to matter.
So the same wound as 1912. The voters showed up and the machine picked someone else.
The exact same wound. And it plays out at the Chicago convention with the whole world watching because now there's television. Riots in the streets, police clashing with protesters, and inside the hall this bitter fight.
And that's the difference from 1912. The cameras, everyone sees it. The gap between the people voted and the party chose is suddenly on television in every living room.
So the pressure becomes unbearable.
The party can't survive looking like that, so the Democrats set up a commission to reform the whole nomination process. It's usually called the McGovern-Fraser Commission, and its work going into the early 70s basically rewires everything.
This is the actual revolution, not the flashy convention floor, the boring commission report. That's what changes your life as a voter.
What did it actually do, in plain terms?
In plain terms, it made the primaries and caucuses the thing that decides. Delegates now had to reflect how people actually voted. The path to the nomination now runs through voters in the states, not through a handshake in a suite.
And there's an irony there too, isn't there? Because George McGovern helps write the new rules.
And then rides them to the nomination himself in 1972. The man who reformed the doorway walks straight through it. His campaign understood the new machinery better than anyone because he'd helped build it.
And the Republicans move in a similar direction, not because of the same commission, but because once one party opens the doors, it's very hard for the other to keep saying no. Ours are still chosen in the back.
So the system almost everyone alive today thinks of as ancient and permanent.
It's about 50 years old. It's younger than the moon landing.
That reorders my whole sense of it. Let's do a round of the things people get wrong, because I think we've already knocked a couple over.
The big one for me, people think the primary system is in the constitution. It's not in there at all. There's not a word about parties, let alone primaries.
Right, parties are private organisations in a legal sense. That's part of why the rules are such a patchwork. Every state, every party does it a bit differently, and the calendar and the rules change election to election.
Which is why nobody can ever quite explain to you how a caucus works.
Nobody can explain a caucus, not even the people running it.
All right, actually try. What is a caucus versus a primary?
A primary, you walk in, mark a ballot, walk out. It's an election. A caucus is a meeting. You show up at a school gym on a weeknight. You physically stand in a corner for your candidate. People give speeches. And if your corner's too small, they might tell you to go pick a second choice. It takes hours, which is why turnout's tiny. You've got to really want it.
So the format itself filters who shows up.
Completely. The busy, the tired, the parent with no babysitter, they are out. The diehards are in.
Second misconception?
That the convention used to be the fake part and now it's the real part. It's the reverse. The convention used to be where the decision actually got made. Now it's a televised celebration of a decision that was already made in the primaries months earlier.
The convention today is a 4-day advertisement. The suspense is gone, which is a little sad. The drama drained right out of it.
You missed the 100 ballots.
I missed the 100 ballots. Not for the country's sake, for mine.
And here's one I really want people to sit with. We tend to assume more direct voting automatically equals more democratic, full stop. And I'd push back a little on the full stop.
Go on. This is the one I want to hear you defend.
So the old system had a filter. The party pros knew the candidates personally. They were thinking about who could actually govern, who could win, who'd blow up in October. When you hand it entirely to primary voters, you get more democracy, yes, but you also lose that filter. Turnout in primaries is low, and it's the most fired up voters who show up.
So you can nominate someone the enthusiasts love and the general public can't stand.
You can. I'm not saying go back to the bosses, I'm not. I'm saying every system trades something. The bosses traded away the voter's voice. The primaries traded away the filter. There's no free lunch here.
And do you two actually land in different places on that? Because I can't tell if you're disagreeing.
I don't think we are, quite. I just waited the other way. I'll take the messy voters over the tidy bosses every time, knowing exactly what Nico says I'm giving up.
And I take the voters too. I only bristle at people acting like it was a clean win with no cost. It wasn't. It was a trade.
So it's not a disagreement, it's a difference of what you're each willing to pay.
That's a nicer way to put it than I managed.
I'm the lead host. It's my job to make you both sound coherent.
And a thankless job it is.
So bring it home. 3 people. First time working through this together. What does this whole story actually teach us?
For me, that every reform becomes the next generation's villain. The convention was the fix for King Caucus. The primary was the fix for the convention. And I promise you, somewhere right now, someone's calling the primaries broken and dreaming up the next fix.
And that fix will have its own hidden cost that nobody will see until it's running.
Exactly. It's not a ladder up to some perfect system. It's a wheel.
And the wheel turns because of that same resentment every time, doesn't it? Somebody feels shut out.
Every time. Trace the line. Jackson supporters, Roosevelts, the anti-war voters in '68. Different decades, same sentence. We showed up and it didn't count. And the sentence keeps working because it keeps being partly true. What I leave people with: resist the tidy story. The smoke-filled room, King Caucus, the noble reformers. Every one of those has a legend layered on top of a messier truth. When someone hands you a clean villain and a clean hero in American politics, that's the moment to slow down and read the footnote.
Says the woman who's been reading us the footnotes for half an hour.
Somebody has to.
For me, I keep coming back to that person by the telegraph, waiting to find out from a boy with a wire whether he's going to run for president. Because underneath all the machinery, all the ballots and commissions, it's people. People wanting power, people wanting a say, people feeling cheated and pushing back.
And that pushback is the engine. We showed up, why didn't it count?
And each time the system bends a little to answer that. Never perfectly.
Never perfectly, but it bends. And that might be the most hopeful thing in the whole story, that the pressure from below actually moves the walls, even if it takes 50 years and a disaster on television.
50 years and a lot of cigars.
That's where we leave it. Nico, Ravi, this was a joy to figure out with you.
Same. First of many footnotes, I hope.
Absolutely. Bring the telegrams next time.
This episode was generated with AI by Demades.